Hi, welcome to this astrology chat live for January 21st, 2025. The iPad that I usually use for these daily check-ins, batteries are dead, not working. It has become but a stand to hold the old school paper chart that now rests upon it, and the cord that's charging it, hopefully, finally, like I thought it was overnight, uh, is now just a holder for the chart. So we will use an old-fashioned paper chart here, like they did in the 1990s, to talk about the astrology of the current astrology in general, and any questions you might have. That's what I like to do here every day. I'm going live every day in 2025. So today I want to talk about the Sun conjunct Pluto. And again, I'm going to be very old school here. I'm going to circle it with a pen. This is the aspect we are focused on today. The Sun-Pluto conjunction that is occurring in Aquarius. This is active from yesterday, from Monday, when the Sun entered Aquarius, until really towards the end of the week. You can say maybe the 24th or 25th. The Sun will still be in orb of Pluto. So we're talking about Pluto newly in Aquarius, and the Sun coming into the very first conjunction with Pluto since it entered Aquarius. And this means a few different things that we'll get into. Let's just actually get right into that. The first thing I want to talk about is power shifts. And yeah, I was actually really conflicted today because for the thumbnail, I really wanted it to say power shifts. And I'll explain why in a second. So on the nose in terms of the inauguration here in the United States, that I almost felt like it would seem like I was forcing it, or it'd be like, really, does the astrology say? But like, really, that's what the astrology is talking about. And, basically here's why. There's many other things too, but this is one big deal with this Sun-Pluto conjunction that's active this week. Relates to really sort of transformative, intense power shifts. And even though that's on the nose and it's accurate, we should still talk about it without abandon, because yeah, that's how astrology works. Anyway, Pluto is about power. So can call up themes around power, which can sometimes make us feel powerful and sometimes make us feel powerless, right? Either one of those extremes, we're working the theme of power. And Pluto changes signs quite rarely, every 15 to 20 years. And so Pluto newly in Aquarius, this is a new power dynamic that we haven't experienced before. And as the Sun comes into alignment with newly in Aquarius, it sort of illuminates that. It shines a light on it, right? Our biggest luminary in the sky, the Sun, it calls it to the surface. And so that's one of the things that this can mean, is a power shift. We're very used to Pluto in Capricorn. It had been there since, what was it, 2008? I can't remember off the top of my head, and I'm not going to bore you by looking it up. You know what? It was 15 years. It was 15 years, so that's about right. I think it was about 2008, because the Pluto shift into Aquarius started in 2023. So we're very used to power working in, now it being in Aquarius, where it will be for the next. Things are feeling a little different. So we are seeing this in our world. We're seeing it in the collective, right? As we say, with the inauguration. Just so happens that the astrology is accurate, as embarrassing as that is to me for some reason, as much as I don't want to highlight that too much. I don't know. It's just sometimes it's interesting. Uh, I'm new to working with daily astrology, right? So this isn't anyway. I'm not gonna go on about this. I'm sorry. um, what am I saying? That well, let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back to the idea that when this sun shines the light on this planet, it sort of activates it in a new way. It calls things to the surface. That could be that you learn things. I was going to say. What I was going to say is that we see the in our world, we see them in the collective. And are you seeing that in your life in a way as well? Is there a way in which the power dynamics have shifted? I think that part of the reason I'm a little uncomfortable with this topic is perhaps I'm a little uncomfortable with the subject or the word or the concept of power itself. And I think that the signature is really calling us to work with that, actually. So, um, like I said, we can work with themes of being powerful, we can work with themes of being powerless. Either way, we're seeing those shifts in power right now, a shift in power dynamic. There could be power struggles. You might be seeing that in your personal life as in the collective. Paying attention to how and where you're seeing that in your own life as well as in the collective, and how your feelings are crossing over between the two. There's not that separation. We are a part of the whole, and we are also our own individual self. Playing with something of that dynamic is sort of a part of what's going on right now, actually, with this in Aquarius. There's sort of um, a, a sense of that. So it can be quite a transformative aspect, especially Pluto newly in a house. But any Sun Pluto conjunction is potentially quite deep and intense. Because it's in Aquarius, because it's in a new sign and house, um, it's new. What's going on for you right now that feels different, that feels new, that feels like a change? And this whole thing could be coming through via a conflict in some kind of a way. In terms of just sort of an era shift, this that I want to mention for a second. That we are in an interesting place in terms of this particular degree point. Okay, so this particular degree point, 1 degree of Aquarius, the very early signs of Aquarius. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the last Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that we had was in December of 2020, and it was at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And these are sort of like era-setting aspects. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction comes along every 20 years, and you sort of see a different time period. It's like 1980, 2000, 2020. It's every 20 years like that. And you can really see these distinct blocks of time in the collective. Jupiter and Saturn are the two furthest visible planets. So any Jupiter Saturn transits would be the most rare. So this is the most rare conjunction that's visible with the naked eye, or that was visible to the ancients. So they refer to it as the Great Conjunction, and it's sort of an era-setting thing. And we're right now working with a Jupiter-Saturn square, the first Jupiter-Saturn square since we've come from that 2020 alignment in December of 2020. We are 5 years out, right? We're 5 years into this 2020 period, which actually is kind of wild. It's even crazy just to be halfway through this decade, I think. But, we're sort of on to the next step of this now. There's like a tone setting pace setting aspect to Jupiter and Saturn. Them being in square right now is really interesting. But I think that changes are coming in more and more quickly now that we have Pluto, now that the Sun has come into this conjunction with. Change has been happening, it's been unfolding. But I think now this week, we're at a turning point where things are going to kind of speed up. Um, and again, it's just weird when the astrology matches up with what's happening in the world um, so much, because you go like, I promise I'm not just saying that because we all know that that's the case. You know, we are going through a time where there's a lot of change. We are going through a time where there are power shifts. We are in a week that's probably a big week. You don't have to be an astrologer to know that. But I'm just sort of talking about the astrology, and it is kind of amazing the way it's reflecting what we're seeing in the collective, at least right now. And I think just, yeah, again, one thing I really want to emphasize about that is just to notice, how is that showing up for you? It's such a cool way to work with astrology, to think about like, this thing that is outside of me, how is it also sort of inside of me? And I don't necessarily mean just how we're processing what we're seeing in the collective, how it's affecting us and those around us, how we're contributing, how we're helping to make the world a better place, doing our part, voicing our unique expressions into the world, helping to pull things in the directions that we know and feel are right, important. Um, and also what's going on in your own individual life, where there are these power shifts and dynamics and changes, and how do you need to show up as sort of your best self in order to appropriately manage those situations with love as best as you can, if that makes sense. um, I think that I have written down that trusting in self is very supported at this time, and that really is true, and this applies on any level we're working with this. So let me talk about that for a second. I think really what it's about is that individualism of Aquarius. Um, Trusting yourself sort of over the group. Aquarius energy does that very naturally. Um, I like to say to Aquarians, or people with a lot of Aquarius energy in their chart, like, you didn't even ever try to fit in. And you didn't even understand why anyone would try. Like, you don't even really see the benefit of trying to fit in, much less know how to do it or want to do it or go about trying to make that happen. It's just not your style. Um, and and they agree. So there's a certain separateness to Aquarian energy, where we're able to get in touch with our own unique frequency. Now, that doesn't mean a selfish, individualized frequency, although I suppose a shadow side of this, or one of the more difficult sides of it, could be it manifesting that way for some. But it more means getting in touch with who you are, not who you are in competition with anyone else, or to try to impress anyone else, or because of your feelings or opinions about anyone else, but just really, really getting in touch with that part of yourself on sort of a soul level, and allowing that to be expressed in the world. So, because that's something that Aquarians work with, um, I think it's worth mentioning at this time that that's something that we can draw into to help us and support us. And I also think it's interesting that Leo, if we look to the opposite side sometimes, if there's a lot of intensity in one part of the chart, sometimes it's interesting to consider what's just across the way, especially when the sun's involved. And balancing it a bit over there can be helpful. And Leo is actually about being more out and about in the world, sharing your light with others, sharing your uniqueness, getting attention for it, even getting recognition for it, being that full expression of yourself out for the world to see. So that's something to mention. Um, and then I think as everyone brings that individual sort of sense of authority to the table, inner authority, we create these groups and these communities that are so beautiful and so authentic and are coming from a really different place than when the power dynamic was over in Capricorn, right? When Pluto was in Capricorn, it was very like um, traditional, hierarchical. It was very tempting just to play the role that you were prescribed by society. This Aquarian Pluto energy that we're just exploring now, I don't know any better than anyone else what this is really going to feel like as it continues to unfold. I can look at the astrology, I can look at the significations, but as we live it and as we experience it, which no one has before who's alive today, Pluto hasn't been in Aquarius for a very long time. Was it the 1700s? 1600? I think it was the 1700s. Um, we'll really get a sense for what it feels like. So, um, but that individual expression, that individual authority coming together in a group from that authentic place, um, yeah, trusting that self, trusting that inner voice, that unique perspective instead of those outer authorities like when we were in Capricorn and it was more about falling into the roles that we played. This is being driven more by that inner voice, that inner perspective instead, and allowing that light to shine in the world in a way it never has before. So, as I said, something about, well, I'll say it a little differently. There's something about Pluto that we can't really understand until we get into it. It goes so deep and it's so transformative that part of the thing with Pluto is it's like beyond our understanding until we work with it. So it is hard to talk about as we're moving through it. But if you feel that sense, that is on time with the astrology. And I think we certainly do see an era shift sort of reflected in the world. And we don't know yet exactly the implications of that and of the reaction to it and of the way different things unfold in response and just how the world continues to move forward and how we all continue to contribute to that as individuals. And for some reason, this has been a challenging live for me today. I'm not quite sure why. I'm feeling fine. I just felt a little tongue-tied unexpectedly speaking about this aspect. I actually took my notes for it very quickly and then uh, not very quickly, but easily yesterday. And then I woke up and reviewed them and felt fine. But then as I sat down to talk, something felt a little much. And maybe that's the case right now. There is sort of a heaviness to an aspect like this. So um, always feel free to leave any questions in the comments and I'll get to them tomorrow if you're watching this later. And if you enjoy my content, please give it a like. Feel free to subscribe. I do monthly horoscopes, best watched by your rising sign. I'll attach some other videos here that are relevant to the current astrology. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.